Amen. Our passage that we're going to have a look at is John chapter 1. John chapter 1, verses 1 to 18. If you've got a phone, you can pull it out and have a look. Otherwise, it's going to be on the screen. John chapter 1, verses 1 to 18. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him, all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. In him was a life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He himself was not the light. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world didn't recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. And yet, to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to be children of God. Children not born of natural descent or of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. John testified concerning him. He cried out saying, "This is the one I spoke about when I said, he who comes after me has surpassed me because he was before me." Out of his fullness, we've all received grace in place of grace already given, grace upon grace. For the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, but the one and only Son, who is himself God and is in closest relationship with the Father, has made him known. This is God's word. Well, Christmas. What a crazy time of the year, right? We have this time when we sing joy to the world and peace on earth and silent night. And then we go and proceed to have the most non-peaceful, non-silent, stressful time of the year, right? And it worked out as I was preparing this message. I had to go and meet someone earlier in the week, and I was waiting for them in Westfield, Woden, and it was I had half an hour to wait, and so I was just sitting there, and it's the week before Christmas, which is like peak madness in shopping centres. And it was so interesting because if you are like the average Australian who is not religious, not interested in like the faith side of Christmas, this is what Christmas is about. It's like prezzies and family time and just all of the preparation that goes with that. And we get really, 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 really busy, and then we have a couple of days of sort of stopping, and then we go to the beach and we come back and get back into life and start it all over again. And it was so interesting that while there's some big crises that have happened recently, and we'll talk about that in just a second, I was sitting there in the Woden Shopping Centre, and it was interesting, you wouldn't think so, that life is just, so many people are just centred on their world, and there's family and presents and gifts and noise, and for goodness sake, like in the mall, there's like Christmas carols competing with each other. There's like, on one side there is, I don't know, Silent Night, and the other side there's like, it's the most wonderful time of the year, and the other side there's like, all I want for Christmas is you. And I will let you into one of my great weaknesses. The moment I hear all I want for Christmas is you, something inside of me just like has convulsions. Because it's just played too much, and Mariah Carey, no. And I thought, so a couple of years ago, I was in Pakistan for Christmas, and I thought, this is the one place where I'm going to be able to escape Mariah Carey. And I walked down the street, and Mariah Carey was playing in Pakistan. And I was like, Lord Jesus. And so while everyone is stressed and frantic, and the mall was crazy, I was sitting in Westfield Woden with John 1, and in the middle of the hype and the noise, it's such a contrast, right? John 1 is this alternative Christmas story. It's like if you stripped back all of the pageantry and the Christmas play version, if you take out all the shepherds and the wise men and the presents and the angels and the singing, and you just have the message of Christmas, this is what it is. John 1, that God, the eternal, the one who breathes and worlds come into existence, the one who with a word sustains all things, steps in. And he steps into our world, into the muck and the grime and the humanity of it all. And I've got 3 things out of this alternative Christmas story in John 1 that I want to share with you. Point number 1, Christmas shows us the darkness. Point number 2, Christmas shows us the light. And 3, Christmas calls us to respond to a person. Point number 1, Christmas shows us the darkness. And it's, as I said, it's just like this raw truth just here. In the beginning was the word. The word in Greek is logos. It means the statement, the message, the purpose. In the beginning, God existed and he had purposes. And this word was with God and this word was God. And then straight away it just says, he was with God in the beginning. That this is a person. Through him, all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. In him was life. And that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And it's interesting, it then says in verse 9, it says, the true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world, and he was in the world. And though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. And God steps into the world at Christmas, this is fascinating, and is unrecognized and unreceived. And this is showing up the nature of the problem. See, at Christmas, I think we can kind of pretend it's the most wonderful time of the year. And there is obviously many wonderful things about Christmas, but Christmas is also so full of brokenness. And if you've ever been to a Christmas dinner with relatives and there's like politics involved and then there's always the like last minute, oh my goodness, we ran out of cream and I forgot this and the shops aren't open. And Christmas is stressful and complicated and messy. And as I was preparing this, I was also thinking, how do I speak about the Bondi shooting in the middle of this? That whenever there's a big event like this, there's some people that are saying you need to go out and respond straight away, and then there's others that say you shouldn't respond. And I was thinking about this big event that's happened, and a poem came to mind, which is from William Butler Yeats, The Second Coming. And if you have not looked at your English Year 11 textbook since Year 11, you may have forgotten about this poem. But it says here, things fall apart, the centre cannot hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed and everywhere. The ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. And that's a big part of the problem, that there is this brokenness at Christmas. That there are these moments where things fall apart and the center cannot hold, and anarchy and lawlessness is loosed upon the world. And this is, sometimes we can forget this in the middle of Christmas, where we put on decorations and sing joy to the world, but we live in a broken world that's full of darkness. And this is what John 1 shows us. We live in a dark world where we grieve that there is evil, like the shooting in Sydney, and we grieve at hate, and we grieve that as Christians we see the nature of the problem. And it's not just someone out there, but it's actually something deeper. Verse 10 to 11 says, he came to that which was his own, and his own did not recognize him. He came into the world that he had made, and the world did not receive him. It'd be so easy to say, the problems of the world are out there, those people. And yet, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who was a Russian living in the time of the USSR, was part of the elite. You might have heard me talk about this quote before. He was part of the group that didn't think that gulags and evil things were going on in the Russian Empire. And yet, tides turned and he found himself at odds to the empire that he was living under. And he found himself in the gulag that he didn't believe existed. And he writes in his book, The Gulag Archipelago, if only it was so simple. If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, if only it were necessary to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through every human heart, and who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart? He goes on and says, it was only when I lay there on that rotting prison straw that I sensed in myself the first stirrings of good. Gradually, it was disclosed to me that the line separating good and evil passes through all human hearts. The line shifts, and inside it oscillates with the years. Even within hearts overwhelmed by evil, one small bridgehead of good is retained, and even in the best of all hearts, there remains an uprooted small corner of evil. And I think what Alexander Solzhenitsyn identified is what John says. There is this darkness. And one of my favorite responses to the Bondi shooting is I looked at a bunch of different churches' responses, friends' responses. There was a friend who's a pastor in Mumbai, an Australian, and he was responding to this, and he says, I can't even begin to imagine what sort of bitterness and unforgiveness would lead someone to do an act like this. And he said, and my response to that shouldn't be to point the finger, but my response should be to first look in my own heart and say, what's the unforgiveness and the bitterness that I've been carrying? Because that's the end result. And the problem, according to John chapter 1, is the darkness of heart, that the God who made the world comes in and is not received, is not recognized. And Christmas shows us this. It shows us the gospel, the good news. I cannot save myself. I can't muster myself to be good enough, to pull myself together and be enough. My heart is so inclined away from God and caught up in the chaos and busyness and Christmas decorations and materialism and just my own little world. My heart is so messed up that in order for God to save me, he has to do the work himself. In one of my readings earlier this week, I've been going through the Bible in 1 year, and it was in Isaiah chapter 63, which is this fascinating prophecy 600 years before Jesus. And it says, who is this that comes from Edom, from the city of Bozrah, with his clothing stained red? Who is this in royal robes, marching with great strength? It is I, the Lord, announcing your salvation. It is I, the Lord, who has the power to save. And Isaiah asks, he says, why are your clothes red? As if you've been treading out grapes. And God responds, I've been treading the winepress alone. No one was there to help me. I'm going to skip forward to verse 4. It says, for the time has come for me to avenge my people, to ransom them from their oppressors. I was amazed to see that no one intervened to help the oppressed. So I myself stepped in to save them with my strong arm. Some translations say there was no one else, so I bared my arm and did it myself. And that's the good news. It's the hard news of Christmas. That there is a darkness of our world against which the brightness of a star of hope shines. Which brings us to point number 2. Christmas shows us the light. And as I say that, I'm very aware that that is so cliched. May the light of Christmas shine on you. Ugh, no. That this is not a generic, saccharine, meaningless sense, the light of Christmas, sending thoughts and good vibes kind of thing. No. This is specific. Have a look. In our passage that we've been looking at, it says here in verse 3, in him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome. And when the Bible uses this language, it's not being general, the light of Christmas. No, it's specific. It has a name, Jesus. That light has a name, and there is no other name in heaven and on earth by which we can be saved. There is no other name that ultimately can stand in the face of evil. And let's be honest, we will face evil. I think sometimes Christians are surprised when bad things happen in the world, but we live in a broken world, and the Bible very clearly says that all creation groans, waiting for God to set things right. We live in a world where there is evil, there is suffering, there is brokenness, and yet there is light as well. And in the poem that I read before by William Butler Yeats, who is not a Christian, quite the opposite, and yet he had a line a bit later in his poem where he says, "The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle." And that's our hope. That the darkness itself has nightmares about a rocking cradle. How ironic, how strange. What does it mean? And Frederick Buechner, in his book, The Hungering Dark, says this: "In the darkness of a church, the candles burn. They hold back the darkness, just barely hold it back. And in the darkness of that Judean night, in the midst of nowhere, to parents who were nobodies, a child was born. And whoever it was delivered him and slapped his bare back so that the breath would come. And he cried out, as each of us cry out, with the shock and strangeness of being born into a dark world. And then, as the Gospels picture it, all heaven breaks loose." And that's the good news. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot put it out. But we're not talking here about a generic, saccharine, vague sense of light and good vibes. No, the light has a name. And this brings us to point number 3. Christmas calls for a response to a person. So what are we supposed to do at Christmas? Well, I read a quote this week from Annie Jones, and she said, "I almost always come limping into Advent, desperate for light, but almost too tired to look for it. And then I remember the light came looking for me, and that's the whole point." In our passage, it says that this light came into the world. That's the message of Christmas. And then it says here, they didn't receive him, they didn't recognize him, and yet, verse 12 and 13, all who did receive him, to all who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children not born of a natural descent or a human will, but born of God. The response that's being asked for is not hard. It's not work hard to be good enough. Every other religion in the world says that. And point number 1 says, we can't naturally overcome the evil that is inside of us and the darkness in our own heart that most of the time we don't acknowledge. The answer is not, just go and be the light. You can't, I can't. The answer is to take our eyes off ourselves for just long enough to see the glory and wonder of a God who would step down out of heaven to come and meet with us. To enter in to the war zone, to enter in to religious differences, to enter into human frailty, to enter into family politics. Why? And it's simple. Love. Here, now. That's the wonder of Christmas. The wonder is not just that there is family celebrations and gifts and joy to the world and peace on earth. The answer is that there is a person who at Christmas, we remember, moved heaven and earth and stepped into weakness, as Ryan so clearly and said so well before, who came as a helpless child so that you would know the love of a father who would give anything to know you. The challenge is that most of us are like verses 10 and 11. We live in our own little worlds, and he came to that which was his own. You are his. He made you. And you're his because he redeemed you. And yet we don't recognize it. This Christmas, my prayer is that you would recognize and respond to a person. And that person has a name, Jesus. The Word became flesh and made his home among us. I love how it says it in the message. The Word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. And so in the middle of your crazy Christmas with family and presents and joy and travel and going to the beach and the traffic to Babin's Bay and all of the stuff that happens, may you remember that there is a God who sent his son Jesus. And may you be among those who respond, yes. Because to all who received him, to all who believed on his name, he gave the right to be children of God. That's my prayer for you this Christmas.